Hello, everyone, and welcome to your horoscope for the week of March the 4th till 10th, 2024. We are ahead of a very, let's say, interesting week where things might not be, as clear as they seem, or the opposite of this. Things might not be as complicated, as confusing as they may seem depending on our personal situation and our personal setup. And this is where, not necessarily from an astrological perspective, our personality and our top priorities in the present moment are more the factors which put us into either one category or another, where we might feel this energy as a drive, as something almost invisible, like an invisible hand pushing us in a chaotic and perhaps uncomfortable way, but towards the right direction, towards the accomplishment of a dream, a desire, or simply said, to get into a state where we aspire to be in, whatever that means to us personally. Or it can play out in the opposite way, where we have this motivation, where we have this drive, but everything seems to come in our way as obstacles, but not necessarily just a divine annoyance in that sense, where the universe just tests us and doesn't want to stop testing us. But every obstacle does have a meaning, and every obstacle, similarly to the first situation, is maybe a guideline or a guiding factor towards the right direction personally. But regardless of how this energy may play out in your life, one thing is common, and that is, in a way, a certain kind of weirdness. I cannot find a better term or word to explain this. Weirdness in the sense that two opposing forces, two opposing feelings, two opposing, let's say, energies in their nature, in their intent, are gonna be simultaneously present in a very clear way. And that in itself, for everyone in any circumstance, is rather uncomfortable, frustrating, and we may feel like always every second of next week gonna be like a permanent state of choice, where we have to choose how we what, better said, what and how we polarize. This isn't as simple as the classic case of choosing optimism over pessimism, even though it's similar like that, because ultimately we will have to polarize something. But this is much more complex in the sense, the two opposing forces. In which degree do I give myself or part to myself to both of these forces? You know what I mean? So we really need to balance things out, and we need to, one of the key factors here and the saving grace of this week is we really need to apply a lot of personal wisdom here. Wisdom will get us a very, very, very long way. And on the other hand, there is a strong activation of spiritual power. There is a strong activation of psychological forces and the power of psychology in any way, shape, sense, and form, even collectively in mass psychology. Of course, the shadowy expression of this, as well as in mass manipulation, and all of what is playing out right now. I don't need to really go into detail. But on the other hand, there is a strong energy of the present going into the future, a strong, basically, Aquarian activation here, where that Aquarian energy is very, very realistic and, in a way, future oriented, but not in the dreamy way of Pisces, the other energy very strongly activated, but rather in a foresight, rational anticipation way. So it's very, very reality oriented. And Aquarius is all about the collective, but in the sense of the individual as well, wherein Pisces is everything washes into just one. Pisces, the mist, the ether, basically, which forms in its essence everything in existence, the breath of the divine. So these forces are very different from one another, and they will matter very much in their own right, in their own mean at the same time. So either we make them good bedfellows, which is not all that easy, because as I said, Pisces past, Aquarius future, Pisces water, emotion, irrational, unconscious, Aquarius the opposite, air, rational, higher expression of everything. So, it is Aquarius which gives Pisces, a Piscean principle, a shape and form which is acceptable, which can exist in physical reality. So, you know what I mean? There is also a certain kind of synergy between the signs because one is a gateway into the other ultimately, but at the same time, their very nature are so different from one another that them being emphasized at the same time is going to give a certain kind of discomfort, a certain kind of, like, let me give you an example where there is an anxious state, regardless if it is the more positive expression like serendipity and excitedness, or the more negative, a certain fear or restlessness. There's that state melting together with the dreamy, sleepy, wishy-washy Piscean, the surreal Piscean state. So you can imagine that being caught up in these two states, we will have to see which one we can give ourselves most onto, depending on our circumstance, our personality, our past, as in our personal wisdom. Do we rather stay in the uncomfortable, anxious, but very alert, very ready state? Or do we sink into and drown ultimately in the sleepy Piscean state? Neither, choosing neither in fully, is not a good idea. This is where we have to distribute our awareness between the two, and that is not easy for some people. It may even feel like an episode of madness or an episode of um how should I say, a certain schizo episode in one's life. Because for some people, this will almost feel like a bipolar expression, because it will alternate that very quickly. While for other people, it is two at the same time what is real and what is not. But besides this, it is quite an eventful week, especially if it comes to surprises, chaos. Something comes to your awareness and it changes the situation profoundly and radically. But this more towards the end of the week. At the beginning of the week, as I said, it's more like the sleepy Piscean state and what's true and what's not. But when I say what's true, what's not, of course, there is the typical expression, what can we believe from what we see and hear from media, from centralized power, etc., etc. What is actually, is there such a thing as truth? There's this, but there is where we don't know what our own inner truth is, because sometimes inner truth is highly subjective. What are we? As in, what do we resonate more with? And many times, sometimes it's very clear. Something is feels very off, on another very resonant. So that's very clear. But what if there is a situation where we have to either decide what resonates most and the resonance is powerful in all cases, or what is the lesser bad, as in what do we feel less repulsed about. So this is not an easy truth to reach, basically. So there is this. Now, another energy, but most of this is, future oriented, because we're building something, we're working towards something, even if we need to distill our inner truth, what resonates the most or what repulses us the least. That is a preparation for the future, basically. But at the same time, as Saturn truly puts one foot into the second decan of Pisces, and we also have the Sun there, and we also have Mercury there, but Mercury will leave it. Mercury will go into the third decan of Pisces, but the second decan of Pisces is very Cancerian. Saturn, the past, karma. For a lot of people, this will open up a karmic period where things are recalled from the past. One way, for some people more directly, they meet someone from the past or a family member, family karma, Cancer, decan of Pisces. That is usually where family, or, that kind of where we once belonged to, maybe a relationship, a place, a community, a workplace, anything is possible here, but where you were an integral part of some Cancer, where your roots were, that is being evoked from the past, either as a moment of big wisdom, where we remember what happened back then and we draw a big wise conclusion that will help us spiritually, psychologically, morally, or there is some kind of real action where the past actually comes back. So this opens this karmic period. This is the very, very first stages. And this energy is also pretty much already pre-eclipse energy. So the fated energies of the eclipse, where on the 24th of March, 24th, 25th, something like that, we have the penumbral lunar eclipse in the sign of Libra. It might not be the most astrologically precise eclipse and the most powerful one, but it is basically very relevant, especially that Libra. Let's just look at the rudimentary factor. Relationships in our lives, it doesn't matter what nature, even if it's just a simple utility contract. For some people, that might be very important or very emphasized right now. And on the world stage, it is all of the diplomatic relationships and international justice and courts of justice. It's on fire. Even in our personal lives, it's the relationship part, or wherever this Libra falls in your chart, it's on fire. If I'm not mistaken, the south node is still in Via Combusta, the path of fire. So relationship dynamics are, as I said, on fire. This is where relationships transform, change, but especially the south node release. There is a release in the best possible way, of course, because this can mean forgiveness. This can mean coming to terms. This can mean a moment which truly settles the situation for good, legally or otherwise. But of course, this can even be, I don't want to say necessarily bad, but not comfortable, where divorces and relationships transform. Once you were lovers, now you're just best friends. You are, and you are gonna be, but still you're different because both of you are different. So you will have to change things around a lot in your daily routines and answer important questions within yourself. Just in and the eclipses, because Libra will have another eclipse in October, 2nd of October. So where I'm going with this is that Libra is really emphasized in the in this year, in this cycle, let's say. Libra is really, really emphasized. So there is a lot of activity that's gonna go on in everything ruled by Libra. And this is a funny story, but I want to say this to those who study astrology. No, Libra as an or as a physical correspondent usually, and this is where it differs a bit. The opinions of different astrologers differ, but Libra usually rules the kidneys. And my soul sister, as soon as the Libra South Node activities started to take place, as soon as the South, I can't recall 100% correctly if there was a South Node Mars conjunction or another, like a lunation or something there, but she immediately had a flare up of her kidney stones and she had to very quickly go and have surgery. And that kidney stone was there for ages and it never bothered her. But this was the time when it had to go, and South Node elimination. So it played out in such a literal way in her life, especially that for her Libra was, I'm not sure really. It might have been sixth house or eighth house, but it was a physical house anyway. So yes, thank you for this moment. But this being said, let me just share my screen and let's go through the week, because from an astrological perspective, there isn't all that much taking place, especially that if you look at my screen, the planets, let me just highlight this for you. Just a moment. So look at this, excluding the moon. So we exclude the moon and the asteroids and the dwarf planets. We're just looking at the main astrological power players are packed into one part of the sky in a larger way, of course, from 1 degree of Aquarius to this 20 degree of Taurus. So all major power players are packed into just 4 signs, where Pisces and Aquarius are highlighted this week. So this is where there isn't a lot of, for example, there isn't trines between big power players. There are, for example, sextiles and other, I don't want to say minor, but less dynamic aspects. But this means that it's very, very karmic. Whenever we have this configuration, even in someone's personal chart, where most planets are packed into one hemisphere or just a few signs which neighbor one another, that person comes with a very strong karmic mission. If these, if this, let's say stellium, even though it's not, is packed, let's say in houses from 1 to 6, 1 to 7, 7 not included, that person usually has a very strong personal mission. Karmically, life has to be much more about the self and what happens to me, of course, depending on the planets and how the story goes out, especially if the sun is there. It's very, very me, my story. Not in an egocentric way, in a bad, in a narcissistic way, but rather that life story is about them, and no matter what they do, it has to be. It is destined like that. If this conglomerate of planets is from 7 to 12, that means that the person is really much more destined to play out in a social way. So their actions and the fruits of their labor and life and existence impact the world much more. You know what I mean? For example, leaders, revolutionaries, inventors, people, so very, very, very social people who are like souls of a group or society or a community. So this is where people born under this energy, depending on which hemisphere this conglomerate of planets is gonna be, are gonna have very, very intense lives. But the world and our experience of it is gonna be extraordinarily intense. And this is not just next week. This is all of March. This is basically until the sun, along with Mercury, will start to move beyond Uranus. Of course, the moon is not included in this. So this, we have quite a few weeks of this energy, very, very intense. But because these signs are neighbors to one another, uh, for example, in this case, this week, Pisces and Aquarius, this energy can be very, very hard to bear because two things different in nature but neighboring, so even if they're not necessarily correlated, their impact is there simultaneously. So like for example, two areas of life or one area of life, but two separate things that are happening in there where we have to multitask or symbolically split ourselves into two and exist in a multi-dimensional way. Exactly, perhaps this is the best expression of it. It's not easy. It is energy consuming. It is tiresome, especially with this sun. If you can see, sun and Mercury, even though their conjunction is very, very minor at this moment, because we are on the 4th of March, but they're still together. They're sandwiched between Saturn and Neptune. Mercury is the mind, Sun is the light of our consciousness, so we're processing something. We're processing reality. This is where we also have this energy from the past, the opening of this larger karmic period. We also have our dreams and our inner world, the fluctuations there, the self-processing that we have to do, the big questions that we need to answer ourselves and only we can answer, what we resonate with and what we prefer, or which principles are closer to us. That's something we cannot Google or we cannot ask Alexa. As smart as she is, and she's getting smarter by the second. But that's something only we can answer to ourselves. That is something that not even your astrologer can answer you. You have to come up with the answer. So there is that, but there is the Venus and Mars and Pluto, of course, in Aquarius, things coming from the collect energies, information, for example, the disruption, or this is where every empath and every spiritual person feels so weird right now because on one hand the spiritual life is very active, dreams and unconsciously, but consciously it's hard to connect to it. It's almost like the spiritual life has a mind of its own. Real life, or how should I say, another area of life is filled with chaos, and there is whatever is going on in the world, the massive stress factor, and every spiritual person is called upon now in a very clear way to give their energy, their intent, their power, their faith to at least having a future, to help the situation spiritually with energy, with the power and physics of consciousness. So you can see that this is a very not easy mix. A lot of activities happening in one's professional life, for example, then also in their relationships, for example, or and of course inner forces needing to be solved and given a shape and form to, because at the very end of the week we are going to have a very, very potent super new moon in Pisces, very creative, very Uranian. So when Uranus mixes with Pisces, that is a weird but very, very productive, very especially productive, that Uranus is in Taurus, and creative energy. But speaking about the 4th of March, I would like to wish a very, very, very happy birthday and solar return to my dear friend Ishti, wishing you a magical and blessed birthday. Thank you for this. So we see the Mercury and the Sun sandwiched between the reality of Saturn and the total unlimited dreaminess of Neptune. What is real and what is not? We have like a permanent reality check from Saturn, but also permanent allure into dreams, fantasy, and even illusions from Neptune. Or how this plays out in a very concrete way. We know there's permanent information coming in Saturn, but we know that the information is permanently false. Whatever happening on the world stage, we know that it's not true, or we know that the truth is not how it is presented, but at the same time, even if it's untrue, what is for certain, Saturn, that there is things going on, important things, groundbreaking things, and karmic things, Saturn again. And, certain kind of cruelty, Pisces. Pisces, as I said, is the Holy Spirit, but the unholy spirit equally. And we can see how like, I'm not even sure of the word to use here, like misinterpretation of certain divine principles, like holy texts and religion, in order to cause violence and to obtain something politically, or etc., etc. And for this, I mean, this happens in every country, in every nation, and of course collectively, globally, internationally as well, in one way or another. Spirituality and the sacred is used in manipulatory purposes. This happens everywhere, so I'm not referring to one situation or the other. I'm referring to basically everything. This is definitely, without a shadow of a doubt, going on. So this is one expression of Pisces, but the other expression is exactly the divine spirit, which is so, how should I say, Saturn in Pisces, real. It seems so real to us that despite all the illusions and all the fakeness out there, its resonance is so unique that it dispels all our doubts. When it is the divine spirit that works in your life, communicates, or whatever, the resonance is so unique that you can tell the difference easily. When it is not the divine spirit, then immediately your doubts come in. When it is the divine spirit, doubts don't even have because you're sucked into the state. So, we will have this as well under this. Sorry, I didn't put the circle in the right place. With the Mercury and Sun sandwich between Neptune and Saturn. So this is a really twilight zone type of energy. And this is also the energy where we see that understand this symbolically. not in a radical, fanatic way, where good and evil many times combat one another. We feel that, we see that, but good and evil are merged into one. They Many times you cannot even differentiate them, where something has both a good and evil side, or both a positive and negative, constructive and destructive side. We cannot even tell what is what. We can also only sense the combat. So this, if we cannot tell what is what, that is a moment of Saturn and Pisces, when we cannot get involved in a truly immersive way, because we cannot tell what is what. Then we feel that we need to detach, because getting involved blindly is a worse idea than ha- taking a step back. So, regardless of how this energy plays out spiritually, psychologically, etc., or especially in relationships, whose side are you on? Who do you love more? These are things where you better take a step back and allow the coolness, which is also Pisces, and especially Saturn in it, of emotion to settle in, so you can figure things out, not sucked into it. Not Pisces is also like quicksand. It sucks you in a millisecond, and then you're drowned in the deeps, Neptune. You will not figure it out until you get to the surface somehow. So whenever the situation is emotionally or otherwise complicated, take a step back and allow things to cool down, or allow clarity, or sleep on it, Pisces. But on the other hand, especially we start the week with Venus holding a square with Uranus. Financially speaking, this is a complicated energy, because it means chaos in currencies, finances, banking, economic stability. However, we must not forget that Mercury is closing onto Neptune. So, in which degree is it true? You know what I mean? But there is going to be economic chaos. And with Venus square Uranus, something that is not necessarily an economic or that kind of expression, where attractions, this is where weird, unusual attractions that usually shouldn't happen. And they leave an imprint, a mark, a chaos on both sides who got attracted to one another in this sense. But still at the beginning of the week, Mars, okay, it's a waning square, but squares Jupiter, exactly what is true, what is not true, what is righteous, what is not righteous. Um, in other ways, this can play out as tumultuous communication, information, favors from friends or other people, connecting with you, but in a very tumultuous or chaotic way, which is not necessarily, peaceful. Why? Because Mars is many times conflict, a divergent point of view, a different opinion, a different vision, different modus operandi at work, for example. So this is where there is a bit of a conflict, or there is a bit of a divergence, or this expands, amplifies the state that I said, where two opposing or very different energies coexist in life. Let's say that you're on you're having a deeply spiritual moment where the divine is blessing you, and it is ecstatic. And this is very likely for certain people, because the Pisces stellium. But on the other hand, which is also true and also happening, there is a lot of pain drowning the world. So, you know what? And because it is a spiritual experience, you're also feeling that. that makes the moment all that much special. That, you know what, that adds a lot to the state. But as we progress through the week, Mars will start holding its square with Uranus, so that makes the chaos much, much greater. Every time Mars and Uranus hold a square like this, and especially that Mars is an air sign, Aquarius, technology, information, expect Mercury retrograde uh, like events or bursts, just a flash of a moment, but it sends everything into chaos in your life, where Mercury has not a lot to do with it, but Uranus is the higher octave of Mercury, and Mars is the activator, two of the quickest planets and energies in astrology. It is almost like sparks. It is the flash of a moment. So there are going to be accidents. There is going to be disruption and breakdown of technology. There is going to be a lot of fighting and a lot of maybe activities, criminal activities in the internet. There is going to be a lot of energy virtually invested, let's say like that. And this can also represent, because Uranus is in the Earth sign of Taurus, um, Earth events, solar flares, um, disruption of communication, disruption of technology due to natural calamities, earthquake, volcano, of course, Mars. So yeah, we have to expect this all throughout the week. And of course, I'm not going to speak about this in great detail because I literally mentioned this in every single horoscope. The saving grace of this larger period is the Jupiter and Saturn sextile, which is grounding, which truly requires from us to bring out our wisdom, our most distilled wisdom, which requires us to both be down on one foot down on earth, but on the other foot in the realm of Pisces, our ideals, our highest principles, our dreams, our magic, our fantasy. And when the two are balanced, that means manifestation. That means faith, hope, but also realism get us where we need to be, one way or another, through pushing through Taurus or through ingenious adaptation, Pisces. One or the other or both will get us there. Also, this week, the Chiron North Node conjunction is still ongoing, so a powerful period for healing, especially that Mars still sextiles. And the sextile is going to perfect in a few days. So this is also really, really good for healing. But then again, the Pisces back of planets is generally good for healing. Mercury and Pisces hospitals, surgery, etc., etc. So detox. This is a really, really good period for that. But Pisces season usually favors more like a psychological or mental detox. Virgo season, the opposite, usually favors physical detox. And of course, there is Mercury sextiling Uranus, its higher octave. So communication, speech, um, resolving things from the past through communication, where one of the karmic tools might be our words communication, our intelligence, emotional intelligence especially, because Mercury is in Pisces, so it's a bit debilitated. But when it comes exactly to spiritual wisdom, emotional intelligence, and knowledge of psychology, is really, really good for all of that. And artistically, it's super poetry, lyrics for songs themselves, because Taurus rules the voice, for music, for arts, for anything, sculptures, clay, It's a fantastic energy, especially that Jupiter still trines the Capricorn dwarf planets, where Quaoar, asteroid Pholus, and Ixion are conjunct one another. And that means art. Also, in the Ixion, breaking the classic rules of art makes something perfect. This is a really, really good, and besides the chaos and all of that, it's a really, really good energy for creativity and arts. So, and also Mercury sextile Uranus, good news, favorable communication. This is where Pisces, Mercury and Pisces, the charm, the personal charm, can secure a job, can secure a lot of things, can secure the heart of someone. Even though, let us not forget that at the beginning of the week, Venus squares Uranus, so the attractions, we must be careful with that. And Pluto in Aquarius, that's also weird attractions. Let's say it like that. So the 8th is the next day on my notes, because on the other days, Mercury will just get closer to Neptune, Mars and Venus will progress a bit in Aquarius. And the moon will change signs, but that's all that is truly happening. But it will feel like a crescendo, do not get me wrong. So here we are on the 8th, where we see that Mercury is conjunct Neptune. So Mercury conjunct Neptune, well, for anything artistic, spiritual, artist, state of consciousness, escapism, fantasy, games, play, etc., etc., it is absolutely wonderful. It is superb. But for anything sharply intellectual, it is not very okay, because it simply drowns the mind's quickness and logic. The processor is not gonna, it's gonna overheat. So it's for any type of strong mercurial energies, for example, where activities where, if Mercury is in Virgo, they go like clockwork, like HR issues, anything that needs to be figured out with intellect very, very quickly, problem solving, but the good type, or nitty gritty, identifying things very quickly. For any of that, it's not a very good energy. And also communication. It might be sweet as honey, but how real or true or possible is it? And the negative expression, scammers. Be very careful. Emails that you get, if it's too good to be true, it is, chances are, lies, deception, impersonation, and drugs. Be careful, especially what decisions you make while under the influence of certain, let's say, substances. And by this time, Mercury is very distant from Saturn, so the reality check is not all that much there. And Mercury holds a semi-sextile, so a rather uncomfortable conversation with Venus in the sign of Aquarius. Venus in the sign of Aquarius, what's the trend? Let's say, what other people do, what the internet does. Mercury conjunct Neptune, something might stray very much from that. How you want to do it. Apply this in any situation. So, which one do you follow? Do you get into the extremes of your own delusion, or do you get into following someone else's delusion? You know what I mean? So a semi-sextile, not good for making choices, delicate. What do I love? Venus. And Venus is the lower octave of Neptune. What do I love? What is righteous? What is true? What is more true? What is less of a lie? It's not a very easy energy for making. And at this moment, on the 8th, Moon is conjunct Mars. So something is on fire. Something that is either energetic or informational in nature, and these two square Uranus. Let us not forget. So communication, something is not right, something is not doesn't make sense, or something is way too tumultuous. You have almost like a mini breakdown, or you're overwhelmed by something, or there is bad collective news. There is imminent danger here, and it's of course it's not true, but it stresses you. You know, the moon conjunct, and also moon conjunct Mars, intervention of other people, but sometimes square Uranus, the intervention is not welcomed. You know, when someone finds you a job you didn't ask for, when someone uh almost like forces you on a date with another person that you really don't want to go out with, but what do you know, randomnesses and weirdnesses like this um make the situation complicated. This holds the same type of semi-sextile with the sun, so it's uncomfortable and it can get to angry words or strong misinterpretation, or no, Neptune conjunct Mercury, uh, drinking or anything like that. So we have all of this weird energy while the world is burning. We cannot forget that. You know, that will be a constant. And there is a lot of, you know, karmic energy starting to appear in our lives. So the past is also activated, but thank goodness the sun is almost out of the second decan of Pisces. Now let's go to the ninth, where Mars is square to Uranus perfect. So I spoke about this, the chaos, the disruption, the conflict, the internet, whatever is going to go on there, revolution, social disruption. But fortunately, this is a quick energy. So it is almost like a very intense moment, but it can do, I'm not going to lie, it can do some damage. But with Uranus, that damage is necessary because it needs to raise awareness. This is ultimately exposing the truth type of energy. And last but not least, we have to go to the 10th. Now, on the 10th, the highlight of the show is the Mars Uranus square is still ongoing, pretty tight. Uh, Venus is almost at an erratic degree of Aquarius. So whatever the collective is doing, or whatever the collective value is, whatever trends, chances are it's not all that nice. But we have the new moon in Pisces, where it on one hand it semi-sextiles Mars, so there is some discomfort. The new moon itself is magical, manifestory, dreams, fantasy, especially if those dreams and fantasies have a strong moral or wisdom type of alignment, Saturn, but they have sufficient faith and purity within them, Neptune, they manifest. And this actually holds the potential of miracle and miraculous energy, because sextile Uranus is in the flesh of a moment. It comes into existence. Taurus, Earth sign, so it's manifestory. And also, at the same time, Mercury freshly entered into the sign of Aries, leaving its detriment of Pisces. Now, on one hand, this is quick Mercury. So it's really good for quick decisions, getting things done, and just doing stuff. The bad thing is it's impulsive. Angry words, anger manifested intellectually or in the mental sphere in the head will get into trouble. Or some think before you speak, or in many cases, impulsive action is not wise and not ideal. So, we get both of these expressions at the same time. And what is more important is that Mercury holds a sextile with Pluto. It gives the Plutonian intensity. So this is big communication. This is important. This is where it's also a persuasive energy, Aries. This is initiation. So if you have to be brave and initiate something in any way, shape, and form, or reach out for help, for example, Aquarius humanitarianism, or take an initiation, an action, start something, promote something that is rooted in wisdom, there's a plan, etc. Of course, not something purely fantasy. This is really, really, really good. And it will get things done, especially that a new moon, new beginning, creational energy, Pisces, it can very well be the dream, the fan, because everything in existence is really just a dream, just a fantasy. Nothing is all that real. But with Saturn, there needs to be a realness for the sake of harmony. So this new moon's creational energy is really, really good. But I have a separate video speaking about this. Feel free to check it out if you want to know what this Pisces new moon, affects us in more greater detail. And this is where we also have a minor astrological conversation where Juno in the sign of Virgo holds a trine with Ceres, asteroid Ceres, in the sign of Capricorn, if I'm not mistaken. But let us look at this. Ceres in Capricorn, yes, of course. Conjunct Pholus and Quaoar, and Juno in the sign of Virgo, conjunct Orcus. Why I like this energy? Because Virgo, the problem solver, Virgo intelligence, Virgo earth sign. Juno is the planetoid of partnerships, asteroid of partnerships. So there is someone who can help. And Ceres food crisis, you know what I mean? Pholus, taking a risk for the sake of helping. Bravery, courage. And Quaoar, uh, Quaoar is usually a creator deity who specializes in song and sound vibration, but in the context of this situation, voicing it, attracting help by voicing something. And Ixion, breaking those rules which are ridiculous, which go against compassion. So I like this configuration of energy. But of course, the highlight of all of this is the Pisces new moon at the beginning, at the end of the week, because on one hand, that opens up pre-eclipse season. It is a very powerful creational energy, full of surprises. And when I say surprises, that surprise can come in a bad shape and turn out to be good. Why? Because Uranus is square to Mars. It may be a bit frightening, or it may be a bit too much, or it might be shocking. It might be like the Tower card in tarot, upheaval. But at the same time, it might lead to something very, very positive, surprisingly good. Because this is Uranus' sextile to the new moon, and Pisces is ultimately compassion. All Pisces is ultimately the spirit. So we create something with the help of the spirit. And Saturn, the manifestory grounding principle, is also there, even though it doesn't converse with Uranus, but it does converse with Jupiter in the same sign as Uranus. So this is a really, really grounding energy. And ultimately, the past, as I said, Saturn dipping into the second decan of Pisces opens up that karmic window for family karma where you once belonged. That comes into focus. That's the past. But us closing it or harvesting something from it or a new perspective on it. And there is also this powerful Aquarian activation all about the future, where Uranus is the ruler of Aquarius is activated by Mars and through a square, so. And at the beginning of the week, it was the ruler of Taurus who held the same square with the ruler of Aquarius. So financially, and economically, and in values, and in attractions, there is going to be a lot of, weirdness, randomness, chaos, but ultimately awareness, uh, raising elements there as well. So thank you so much for listening. Thank you for all the love, all the support, all the beautiful words. Wishing everyone a really magical Pisces new moon. And please do not forget to set an intention of peace, of love, of healing, of food or relief, any type of compassionate seed of intention for all of the world, because Pisces is really good at that. So thank you again. Until next time. Bye for now.